The galaxy was not a peaceful place. Empires rose and fell, yet one constant remained: the Great Coalition. It was an alliance of dozens of alien races, each powerful in their own way, but united in one truth: strength ruled all. Together they controlled star systems beyond counting, and they believed no new species could ever challenge their throne. For centuries their fleets moved like storms, swallowing worlds, demanding tribute, and crushing those who dared resist. That belief began to crack on the day a single human fleet entered their territory. The human ships were not vast compared to alien dreadnoughts. They did not have glowing banners or elegant crystal hulls like the Arvian cruisers. They were simple steel-gray vessels, sharp-edged and built for function. At first, the Coalition looked upon them with disdain. Reports claimed the humans were newcomers to the stars, barely more advanced than frontier tribes. Many alien commanders laughed when the first images of the fleet arrived. "A single swarm of our gunships will erase them," one general said in council, yet the humans did not behave like prey. Commander Ray stood at the bridge of the lead vessel, a heavy battleship known as Iron Will. He was calm, even as alien. Fleets moved in to surround them. His officers looked to him with steady eyes, for they had trained under him for years and trusted his every order. "We will not bend," Ray said. His voice carried through every ship, and every human aboard felt a fire rise inside them. They knew the odds, but fear did not rule them. The Coalition's armada stretched across the stars, thousands of ships glimmering like a sea of lights. Against that sea, the human fleet was a stone cast into deep waters. But the stone did not sink. The aliens expected surrender. Instead, the human fleet advanced. Engines burned bright, weapons charged, and a formation locked tight as if the humans had practiced this very moment for centuries. The Coalition commander on the alien side, a reptilian warlord named Zathor, watched in silence. Something unsettled him. The humans moved with purpose, not desperation. They flew like predators entering a hunt. The first clash came near the rim of the star system. Alien gunships darted forward, firing bolts of energy. The human fleet did not scatter. They turned together, shields holding firm, and unleashed a storm of precise fire. Alien ships broke apart in brilliant flashes. The humans did not waste a single shot. Across the Coalition command bridge, silence fell. They had expected a quick victory. Instead, they watched their ships fall in disciplined waves. "It must be luck," one officer whispered. "A trick." But Zathor narrowed his eyes. He saw something different. These humans fought as if every move had been calculated long before the battle began. Commander Ray stood tall at his console. "Stay steady," he said. "Strike where they are weakest. And hold the line!" His crew answered with firm voices. The humans did not cheer or boast. They simply worked, focused, and calm. Hours passed. Alien numbers still towered, yet their formation grew weaker. Human ships slipped through gaps, breaking supply carriers, striking command vessels, then vanishing back into formation. The Coalition had never faced such tactics. They were used to enemies panicking, scattering, or bowing before overwhelming power. But the humans refused all three. Every soldier aboard those human ships felt the same truth. They were fighting not only for survival, but for respect. They knew the coalition looked down on them as a minor race, unworthy of standing among the stars. That insult fueled their fire. Every shot was a message. We will not kneel. By the end of the day, the coalition lost more than they had ever imagined. Dozens of warships floated in wreckage. Supply lines were cut. Captains sent frantic reports trying to explain how a single human fleet could stand against such odds. Yet the answer was clear in the minds of those who faced them. Humans fought, with a spirit that could not be measured by numbers. When silence returned to the battlefield, Commander Ray sent a single transmission to every corner of Coalition space. His words were few, yet they struck like thunder. We are not prey. The message echoed across alien channels. Soldiers whispered it in fear. Civilians asked questions their rulers could not answer. The coalition, for the first time in generations, felt uncertainty in their own power. One human fleet had entered their territory. It had not been crushed. It had not fled. It had shaken the very belief that had kept the coalition strong for centuries. And though they would not admit it aloud, deep inside their hearts, alien commanders asked themselves the question that haunted their dreams. If one fleet could do this, what would happen if Earth sent more? The stars had changed that day. The lone human fleet had drawn a line in the darkness, and the galaxy would never forget it. The coalition could not believe what they had witnessed. Their great fleets had suffered defeat at the hands of a single human formation. It was not a crushing defeat, but it was enough to shake the confidence of rulers who had long believed themselves untouchable. Messages flew across coalition space. Some argued that the humans had used tricks or stolen weapons from other empires. Others claimed the humans were reckless fools who had simply been lucky. Yet underneath these excuses, there was fear. They had seen discipline, precision, and courage. These were not qualities of a weak species. The High Council met on a great station orbiting the star Denora. Representatives of 20 empires gathered, in a chamber filled with smoke and banners. Voices rose in anger. One shouted that humans should be crushed before they spread further. Another demanded caution, for the losses had been too costly. Finally, Zathor, the reptilian warlord who had faced Commander Ray, stood. His scales were dark as iron, and his voice cut through the noise. "Do not be blind," he said. "I saw them fight. They were not lucky. They were not weak. They fight as if they were born for war." The council fell into silence. No one wished to agree, but none could deny the truth. And so the coalition made a choice. They would not underestimate the humans again. They would gather 3 of their strongest navies, each led by experienced commanders, and send them together against the lone fleet. If one fleet had failed, then 3 would not. The order went out. Soon the stars filled with the gleam of alien warships, cruisers with wings of fire, battleships carved from stone, and carriers that held endless swarms of drones. The coalition believed that such a combined force could sweep aside any enemy. Commander Ray received word of their approach. His officers stood around the table of stars inside Iron Will. The holographic map showed 3 great waves closing in. The human fleet was small, and every officer knew the danger. Yet none asked to retreat. Ray's eyes studied the map. His hand tapped slowly against the table. At last, he spoke. "They come with numbers. Numbers do not win wars. Minds do." The humans began to prepare. Engines were tuned to peak performance. Weapons were calibrated with the care of craftsmen. Pilots drilled through simulations again and again, moving like dancers in perfect rhythm. Every soldier aboard the ships felt the weight of what was coming. Yet instead of fear, a strange calm settled over them. They had already faced the coalition once and survived. Now they would show that it had not been chance. The clash began near the gas giant Kirill. Its swirling storms cast shadows across space as the coalition fleets arrived in proud formation. The human fleet drifted into view, smaller, sharper, like a knife facing a wall. The coalition commanders laughed when they saw the difference in size. To them, it was hopeless. To Commander Ray, it was exactly what he wanted. The first wave struck. Thousands of drones swarmed from the alien carriers, wings of fire streaking across the void. The humans did not scatter. Instead, Ray gave a simple order. Titan formation. The fleet pulled together into a diamond shape. Shields overlapped, weapons fired in measured bursts, and the swarm broke upon them like waves against rock. Every drone destroyed was another hole in the coalition's wall. Then the humans moved. Engines flared, and the fleet darted forward with speed that shocked the enemy. They cut into the side of the first alien formation, striking command ships before the rest could react. Within minutes, the coalition's front line began to buckle. Zathor, who watched from his distant command station, growled in frustration. He had warned them, yet pride had deafened their ears. The second wave advanced, trying to trap the humans. But Ray's fleet slipped away, vanishing into the shadows of the gas giant. When the aliens turned to search, the humans reappeared behind them, firing into their engines. Ships exploded in chains of light. Alien officers shouted in confusion. How could a smaller fleet move so boldly, so precisely? Their enemy did not fight like any they had faced before. The humans struck hard, withdrew before being pinned, then returned at the weakest points. Every move seemed part of a plan too deep to understand. Hours passed. The battle raged on. The coalition still held the advantage of numbers, yet their strength no longer felt certain. Every loss weakened morale. Every human strike reminded them that this was no ordinary enemy. On the bridge of Iron Will, Ray stood tall. His crew worked without panic, their eyes steady. He gave his orders in short words, never raising his voice. The calm of their commander became the calm of the fleet. By the time the third coalition fleet arrived, the humans had already cut down dozens of ships. Smoke and wreckage drifted across the void, yet the humans still stood. Ray opened a channel to the coalition armada. His words were clear, sharp, and carried far. "You thought we would run. You thought we would kneel. You were wrong. We are human. Remember this day." The transmission struck deeper than any weapon. Soldiers whispered it across their decks. Civilians would later hear it in hushed retellings. For the first time in living memory, the coalition's armies felt the weight of doubt. The humans withdrew into the storms of the gas giant, not as fugitives, but as hunters who had chosen when to end the fight. The coalition did not chase. They were too shaken, too uncertain, too fearful of another trap. One fleet had stood against three, and still it had not broken. The galaxy began to wonder. The stars were quiet after the second great battle. But silence did not mean peace. Across the wide territory of the coalition, whispers spread faster than light. Soldiers who had faced the humans told their stories in mess halls. Captains carried their doubts back to their fleets. Even the common folk on Distant worlds began to hear the name human spoken with unease. At first, the rulers tried to control the news. They called the defeats small matters, tricks of chance, or the fault of careless commanders. Yet the truth could not be buried. Wreckage from destroyed ships drifted into trade lanes. Survivors returned with haunted eyes. And everywhere, the same question arose. If one human fleet could not be broken, what will happen if more arrive? On the world of Kral, where the coalition trained its officers, young cadets studied the battle records. They expected to see random chaos. Instead, they saw patterns, timing, and discipline that rivaled their own. One cadet muttered, "They fight like they studied us for years." His instructor could not answer. Meanwhile, Commander Ray's fleet moved deeper into coalition space. Their numbers were still small, yet they carried themselves with the confidence of giants. They struck supply routes, destroyed fuel stations, and then vanished before larger forces could arrive. Each time they appeared, they left behind not only damage but also fear. The coalition began to realize that size alone meant nothing if the enemy refused to play by old rules. Inside Iron Will, the mood was steady. The crew trusted their commander, and Ray trusted them in return. He knew they could not win by facing every fleet head-on. Instead, they would win by shaping the thoughts of their enemy. Fear was a weapon as sharp as any blade. Ray stood before his officers one evening, the star map glowing before them. "They believe numbers will save them," he said. "But numbers without unity are weak. We will break their unity." His words carried through the fleet, filling every soldier with resolve. Back in the coalition's high council, leaders argued day and night. Some demanded greater force. Others feared that pressing harder would only give the humans more chances to prove their strength. The council chamber grew divided. Old rivalries resurfaced, each empire blaming another for the failure. Zathor, the warlord who had spoken against underestimating the humans, watched in silence. He saw how fear spread, not only among soldiers but among rulers themselves. He thought, back to Ray's voice in the last battle. "We are human. Remember this day." Zathor did remember, and the memory unsettled him more than he would ever admit. Among the common people of the coalition, stories of humans became legends almost overnight. Some described them as unstoppable warriors, their ships built from unbreakable metal. Others said they were ghosts who could vanish into shadows and return without warning. Every tale added to the mystery, and with mystery came fear. On one mining colony, a worker whispered to his child, "They say humans fight not for conquest, but for pride. They do not kneel." The child listened with wide eyes, as if hearing about heroes rather than enemies. The coalition had wanted to paint humans as monsters, but the truth did not fit so easily. Meanwhile, the human fleet struck again, this time at a fuel depot near the star Serath. Coalition guards rushed to defend it, but the humans moved like hunters in a forest. They disabled the station's power, fired only at weak points, and then withdrew before reinforcements arrived. The depot burned, and the coalition's fleets nearby were left stranded without supplies. Ray did not celebrate. He stood on the bridge, watching the flames of the depot on the screen. "Every strike we make," he said softly, "is not only against their ships, but against their spirit." His officers understood. They were not just fighting battles. They were reshaping the balance of fear in the galaxy. In response, the coalition called for an emergency meeting with their ancient warlords, leaders who had not risen from their thrones in centuries. If discipline failed among the young, then perhaps old power would restore it. Yet even those warlords frowned when they heard the reports. They remembered a time long ago when another empire had underestimated a smaller foe and fallen. The ripple of fear spread outward, touching every corner of coalition space. On worlds that had once bowed without question, murmurs of rebellion began. If the humans could stand against the great armadas, perhaps others could too. Ray did not know that his fleet's actions carried such weight across distant worlds, but he suspected. He knew history was not only written by victories, but also by the courage to fight when no one expected it. The humans were no longer seen as a single fleet. They were becoming a symbol. To the coalition, they were a shadow in the dark that could not be crushed. To other species watching from afar, they were proof that the mighty could bleed. The ripple of fear had become a wave. And as every commander in the coalition now realized, waves do not stop once they begin to move. The coalition was no longer calm. After each human strike, their fleets returned damaged, their supply lines weakened, and their soldiers shaken. Pride, once their greatest shield, now cracked under the weight of fear. The Council of Empires sat for days in endless debate, yet no plan seemed strong enough to end the threat. Finally, a decision was made. If ordinary fleets could not bring victory, then the coalition would summon every strength they still possessed. They called upon ancient warlords, legendary commanders who had fought in wars long before the humans ever touched the stars. They demanded every empire contribute ships, weapons, and soldiers. Rivals who had hated each other for centuries were forced to stand side by side. This gathering became known as the Grand Armada. Never before had so many ships gathered in one place. Cruisers the size of cities, dreadnoughts with cannons that could split moons, and carriers that released endless swarms, all stood together. It was a wall of power, meant to crush not only the human fleet, but the very spirit of Earth itself. On the command bridge of Iron Will, the reports were grim. Commander Ray studied the star charts, his eyes locked on the growing mass of enemy ships. His officers waited for his reaction. Some expected him to order retreat. Instead, he gave a quiet smile. "At last," he said, "they take us seriously." The human fleet was small, but it was not weak. It was sharp, disciplined, and clever. Ray knew they could not match the enemy's numbers, yet he also knew that numbers could be turned against themselves if guided into chaos. Before the battle, he gathered his crew. Every soldier, pilot, and officer stood at attention, their faces lit by the glow of the ship's lamps. Ray's voice carried across the fleet. "They come with everything they have. They believe we will break. But remember this, our fight is not for conquest. It is for respect. Every moment we hold, every strike we land, shows the galaxy what it means to be human." The fleet answered with silence at first, a silence filled with resolve. Then the oath spread through the comms. "We will not kneel." The Grand Armada approached near the star of Rhinath, its light casting long shadows across the warships. The humans watched as the horizon filled with countless enemy vessels. It looked as if the night itself had swallowed the stars. When the First shot was fired. Space shook with fire. The Armada moved as a storm, wave after wave pressing down on the humans. The Coalition believed their power was enough to crush Will itself. But the humans had prepared. Ray's fleet split into 3 groups, weaving between the larger vessels. Mines and traps had been hidden among the asteroids nearby, and as the Coalition pursued, explosions tore through their formation. Carriers fell, spilling their drones into useless space. Battleships collided, confused by sudden ambushes. The humans fought like hunters, leading a beast into snares. Every strike was measured, every retreat planned. Yet even with such skill, the pressure was immense. For every alien ship destroyed, another appeared behind it. The Armada's size was endless, and the humans were forced to fight with every ounce of strength. On the Coalition side, chaos grew. Old rivalries between empires sparked even in the heat of battle. Commanders shouted over each other, arguing about strategy. Some sought glory, charging ahead. Others held back, fearing more traps. What had been a wall of unity now began to fracture. Zathor, from his flagship, roared at them to focus. Yet deep down, even he felt the weight of doubt. He had warned them, but they had not listened. Now he saw the truth again. The humans did not fight as prey. They fought as hunters who refused to surrender. Hours passed. The humans struck hard at supply ships, knowing that without fuel and ammunition, the vast armada would slow. They cut at the edges, never allowing the enemy to surround them fully. Still, their ships grew damaged, their shields thin, their engines strained. On Iron Will, alarms rang across the bridge. Smoke hissed from panels, and officers worked with frantic speed. Yet Ray stood firm. His voice was calm, steady, never breaking. "Hold the line," he said. "Strike where they are blind." His presence was like iron itself, keeping the crew's courage unbroken. By the battle's end, the humans had not been destroyed. They retreated into the void, battered but alive, their message clear. They had faced the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen and had not been erased. The Coalition claimed victory, yet their words rang hollow, for in their hearts they knew the truth. The Grand Armada had been forced to gather every strength against a single fleet, and even then they had only managed to push it back, not destroy it. The Council would declare the humans beaten, but whispers spread through the ranks of soldiers and citizens. They whispered of human traps, human courage, and the human commander whose calm voice carried above the storm. The Coalition had shown all their strength. The humans had shown their spirit, and spirit was something numbers could never crush. The Grand Armada had fought and driven the human fleet back, yet the Coalition did not celebrate. Their leaders called it victory, but soldiers who had stood in the battle knew better. They had seen how close the humans had come to breaking their mighty wall. They had seen how discipline and clever traps turned numbers into weakness, and they could not forget that the humans, though damaged, had escaped. Commander Ray's fleet drifted through the dark void, battered but unbroken. Ships bore scars, shields flickered, and engines hummed weakly. Yet morale did not collapse. Instead, it grew stronger, for the humans had survived what no one believed possible. They had faced the full weight of the Coalition and still lived to tell the tale. Inside the command hall of Iron Will, Ray stood before his officers. His uniform was marked with smoke and dust, yet his voice was steady. "We have shown them our spirit," he said. "Now it is time to tell Earth what we have seen." For days, transmissions had been prepared. Records of the battles, maps of coalition strength, and reports of their tactics were gathered together. At last, Ray spoke the message that would be sent home. His words were simple, without pride or despair. "We have faced the coalition. We have stood against their armada. We are still here." The message was sent through deep space relays, traveling across countless light years until it reached Earth. Then the fleet waited. Days turned into weeks, and still the silence of the stars gave no answer. Some officers feared the message would never return. Others wondered if Earth had nothing more to give. Then, one quiet morning, the reply came. It was a single transmission, carrying only 4 words. Every ship in the fleet received it at once. The crew gathered around speakers, straining to hear the voice from home. The words were calm, almost gentle. "We are on our way." The humans aboard the fleet stood in silence. Some felt tears rise to their eyes. Others clenched their fists in quiet pride. For those 4 words carried more weight than any speech. They meant Earth had heard them. They meant they were not alone. Commander Ray listened with his head bowed, his face unreadable. At last, he said, "Then the galaxy will learn what it means when Earth rises." The coalition did not know of the message at first, but spies soon caught whispers. Listening stations intercepted fragments enough to cause fear. Leaders in the council argued again. Could Earth truly send more fleets across such distance? The thought seemed impossible. To cross such vast space required resources beyond measure. Yet fear gnawed at them, for everything the humans had done so far had once been called impossible. On the world of Serath, civilians whispered in marketplaces, "They say Earth is sending more." On the mining colonies, workers laughed bitterly. "If one fleet could do this, what will 10 do?" Even among soldiers, doubt spread like fire. Some refused to believe it, but none could ignore the possibility. Meanwhile, Ray's fleet used the time to recover. Damaged ships were repaired with whatever resources they could find. Engineers worked without rest, turning wreckage into tools, patching holes with scraps and making weapons from spare parts. The humans had always been builders as much as fighters, and their creativity kept them strong even when resources ran thin. Ray walked the decks often, speaking to crew members directly. He thanked engineers for their work, encouraged young pilots, and reminded every soldier that they carried Earth's spirit within them. His presence gave them strength, for he was not only a commander, but a symbol of their unity. As the days passed, more small victories came. Coalition patrols searching for the humans fell into ambushes. Stations meant to cut off their path were destroyed. The coalition commanders grew restless. They had gathered their largest armada, yet the humans still struck where they wished. Zathor, the warlord who had once warned of human strength, grew silent in council meetings. He no longer argued. He simply watched, knowing the truth the others tried to ignore. The humans had not been defeated. They had only been waiting. And then, the fear became open panic. Long-range sensors on the edge of coalition space reported strange readings. Shadows in hyperspace, signatures too vast to be simple traders. At first, the council dismissed them as mistakes. But when the reports grew, they could no longer deny it. Something was moving, something large. Ray received word before the coalition did. His fleet gathered on the edges of a dying star, watching as space rippled with light. His officers held their breath. Then the first new fleet emerged, Earth's banners shining on their steel-gray hulls. One by one, more fleets arrived, 10 in total, filling the void with human strength. Ray stood on the bridge of Iron Will as the sight unfolded before him. His crew stared in awe. They had fought alone for so long that the sudden presence of allies felt like a dream. Ray's voice was soft, almost a whisper. We are no longer alone. The coalition, still debating in their Grand Council, received the news hours later. 10 fleets had arrived from Earth. Entire star systems reported human banners. The galaxy trembled as the truth spread. The coalition had thought they were fighting against one stone cast into the river. Now they saw the flood behind it. The void of space near the star of Kirill had never known such silence. The coalition, armada drifted there, waiting, uneasy. Their banners spread wide to show unity. Yet beneath the banners, fear lingered. They had gathered their greatest fleets, filled the sky with endless firepower, and still they worried. Because far away, rumors had grown into truth. Earth had answered. The first ripple came with a deep vibration across the stars. Long range, scanners screamed with warnings. Space bent and folded as hyperspace gates opened. Out of the light emerged the first new human fleet, then another, then another. One by one, 10 fleets of Earth appeared, surrounding the coalition armada like wolves closing in on prey. Their ships carried the same steel-gray armor as Commander Ray's fleet, but larger, stronger, and countless in number. Carriers launched wings of fighters. Battleships lined up with heavy cannons glowing red. Cruisers glided in silent formation, each moving as if part of a single mind. For the first time in centuries, the coalition armada knew what it meant to be outmatched. On the bridge of Iron Will, Ray stood with his officers as the new fleets formed around them. He had fought alone for so long, yet now he was no longer the lone stone against the tide. Earth had sent a storm. His face showed no pride, only calm. "They have come," he said quietly. His crew stared in awe, their hearts lifting higher than ever before. The communication link opened across the human armadas. Admirals from Earth appeared on screens, their uniforms sharp, their expressions steady. One of them, Admiral Kale, nodded to Ray. "You carried the line. Now we carry it with you." Ray returned the nod. "The coalition will see us not as one fleet, but as humanity itself." The coalition's commanders shouted in confusion as the human fleet spread across the void. Some ordered immediate retreat, but others demanded battle. Pride and fear clashed inside their hearts. Never had they faced an enemy who turned their confidence into trembling doubt. Zathor, aboard his flagship, watched with narrow eyes. He was old enough to know what this meant. "We have lost," he muttered to himself, though no one on his bridge dared repeat his words. Across the human formations, weapons powered up. Engines burned bright. The humans did not fire yet. Instead, a single broadcast reached every ship, every commander, every soldier in the coalition armada. The voice belonged to Commander Ray. It was calm and steady, carrying no anger, only truth. We did not come to conquer. We came to show you this. Humanity will not kneel. You may call us weak, you may call us small, but today you see our answer. We are here, and we will never bow. The words cut deeper than weapons. On alien ships, officers froze, some trembled, others lowered their heads, unable to meet the eyes of their crews. For deep down, they knew what Ray said was true. The humans had survived when no one thought they could, and now 10 fleets stood ready to finish what one had begun. The coalition tried to rally. War drums echoed through their comms, orders barked from fleet to fleet. But there was no unity. Old rivalries returned, empires suspicious of each other. Each one fearing they would be sacrificed first. Ships began to drift out of formation. Some captains whispered orders for retreat even before the battle began. The human fleets, by contrast, moved as one. They tightened their circle, closing around the armada with perfect coordination. Fighters swarmed like arrows, capital ships formed walls of fire, and carriers stood ready to unleash wave after wave. It was a sight so disciplined and vast that even neutral observers across the galaxy gasped in silence. When the first human cannon fired, the battle truly began. The blast tore through a coalition dreadnought, shattering it into fragments. Then came the second volley, then the third. The void lit with fire. Coalition ships scattered in panic. Some tried to return fire, but their volleys struck shields. That held strong. Others broke ranks, fleeing into hyperspace. Every attempt to regroup was broken by human precision. Zathor watched as fleets he had once thought unshakable crumbled before his eyes. He clenched his claws against the command chair. "They are not prey," he whispered. "They are the storm." On Iron Will, Ray did not cheer. His voice remained calm as he guided his fleet. Strike only where needed. Break their will, not their worlds. The humans did not fight for destruction. They fought for respect. They fought to show that no species had the right to claim mastery over another. By the end of the day, the coalition armada lay shattered. Thousands of their ships burned or fled. The humans stood unbroken, their fleets circling like guardians of a new age. For the first time, the galaxy saw the truth. Humanity was not a minor race. Humanity was a power that could not be ignored. The battle at Kyril ended, but its echo reached across every star in the galaxy. The coalition armada, once the symbol of unshakable power, had been broken. Wreckage drifted in silent fields. Survivors scattered in all directions, fleeing to their home systems. The fire of their unity had gone out, replaced by the ashes of fear. Among the human fleets, silence followed the victory. No one cheered, for the scale of what they had done was too vast to celebrate. The crews stared out at the stars, trying to understand what their survival meant. Commander Ray stood on the bridge of Iron Will, his hands resting firmly on the console. He had dreamed of holding the line, but now he saw they had done more than that. They had changed the balance of the galaxy itself. Admiral Kale opened a channel that linked every human ship together. His voice was firm. "We did not come here to conquer," he said. "We came here to prove that humanity will not bow to threats or chains. Today we have shown that truth. Now the coalition must decide if it will continue to bleed or if it will finally accept peace." The message was broadcast to every corner of coalition space. Some leaders tried to dismiss it, claiming their fleets had only suffered bad luck. Yet their own people no longer believed them. Soldiers returned home with stories of human courage and unity. Citizens whispered about the fall of the Grand Armada. And across 1,000 worlds, the question spread. If the coalition could not stop the humans, who could? In the Grand Council chamber, silence ruled. Leaders who once shouted over each other now avoided one another's eyes. They had seen the recordings, the endless waves of human fleets closing in. They knew they could not rebuild their strength quickly enough to match what Earth had shown. At last, Zathor, the reptilian warlord, rose. His voice was low, but every ear strained to hear him. "We called them prey," he said. "We were wrong. They are not prey. They are the storm that breaks the hunter's net. To fight them further is to destroy ourselves. The time has come to accept what we did not wish to see. Humanity stands as our equal, and we must face them as such." No one challenged him. The silence was its own agreement. A delegation was sent. Dozens of ships bearing white banners crossed the stars and approached the human fleets. Their leaders came aboard Iron Will, walking through its steel corridors with uneasy steps. They expected to meet victors filled with arrogance, but instead they found calm soldiers, disciplined and respectful. At last, they stood before Commander Ray. He greeted them not with pride, but with steady eyes. "You came seeking to end us," he said, "but we are still here. Now you must choose. Continue the war or accept peace." The coalition envoys bowed their heads. Their voices were heavy with reluctance, yet also relief. "We accept. The coalition will not raise arms against Earth again." A treaty was signed, one that declared humanity free from tribute, free from chains, and free to walk the stars as equals. The coalition had not been conquered by fire but by spirit, and in that moment, the galaxy shifted. For other species watching, from afar, the sight of the treaty was like a beacon. Worlds long oppressed by the coalition began to whisper of their own freedom. If humans could stand against the greatest armada in history, perhaps they too could rise. The legend of Earth spread, carried not by propaganda, but by the simple truth of what had been seen. Ray returned to his crew after the signing. He looked at the tired faces of his officers and soldiers. "You fought not for glory," he told them. "You fought for respect, and now the galaxy knows our name." The crew of Iron Will stood straighter. They had endured every hardship, every loss, every risk, and now their endurance had carried humanity into legend. As the fleets gathered, for the journey home, the stars seemed different. No longer cold, no longer distant. They were open roads, waiting to be walked. Humanity had shown its spirit, and the galaxy would never again look upon them as small. On the edge of coalition space, Zathor watched the human fleets depart. His officers asked him what would become of their people now. He gave a simple answer. "We will change, or we will fall. The humans have shown us that no empire, no matter how mighty, is eternal. Respect is stronger than fear." And so the new order began. Not one of conquest, but of balance. The humans had not demanded thrones or tribute. They had demanded recognition. And by surviving, by standing, by never bowing, they had won it. From that day, across the galaxy, Whenever a child asked what it meant to be strong, the answer came in whispers. It means to be like the humans, to stand, even when the stars themselves press against you. Commander Ray, the lone fleet that began it all, became a name spoken with awe, not because he sought power, but because he proved that a single voice could echo into the hearts of many. The galaxy remembered the storm that came from Earth, and it remembered that when the storm passed, nothing was the same again. It was everything